next session titled Smart, Scalable and Sustainable Infrastructure to Support ZET Uptake, will dive into infrastructure requirements necessary to support the growing ZET ecosystem. Dr. Seshadri Raghavan, Program Lead for Sustainable Mobility at CEEW, will first set the context and then moderate this session. I'm excited to welcome our panelists for an insightful discussion on this. I invite Mr. Kartikey Hariyani, founder and CEO of ChargeZone, Mr. Gopi Shankar M, CTO Switch Mobility Ashok Leyland, Mr. Ravikiran Annaswamy, co-founder and CEO at Numocity, Mr. Abhijeet Sinha, Project Director, National Highways for Electric Vehicles, Mr. Gurusharan Dhillon, Director, E-Mobility, Customized Energy Solutions, Ms. Priti Shukla, Program Manager, E-Mobility, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Looking forward to the conversation.
Center one? Okay. While the panelists get seated, let me get started. So my name is Seshadri Raghavan, Program Lead Mobility, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Today we are here to talk about infrastructure, broadly speaking. The question, or what we hope to hear from the panelists, is what sort of an infrastructure is needed to support the zero emission transition uptake? So we are keeping the infrastructure that is broad, in a sense that it doesn't include, we're not just talking about the charging or refueling. We are looking at the immediate proximity, interconnection, example, the grid, and also built environment factors, be it roads, pavement, or everything around it. So we are looking at a holistic angle to infrastructure. So just to give some pointers for the audience as well as the esteemed panelists, what do we mean by smart, scalable, and sustainable? So this is, it might sound catch-all, but there are certain key delineation, as you can see. The salience being like each has its own USP that it's essential, standalone. When you're talking about smart, we're essentially talking harnessing technology, the power of technology, digitalization, broadly speaking, the I 4.0 transition. On the issue of scalable, we want to support the rapid nationwide rollout. We are talking size and speed at which it's going to roll. On the issue of sustainability, we have kept out financing out of it. So we are talking more on the long-term viability from multiple perspectives, be it environmental, it could be carbon footprint. Also on the manufacturing side, the efficiency, resource efficiency, how much of materials we use, energy efficiency, the renewable energy integration that is essentially powering, because EVs are not green unless the grid is green. And also we are talking about the broader issue of circularity and the overall material intensity cycle. So these are some pointers. This is meant to be illustrative. So the format is very straightforward. The first one, I'll take the honor of posing a simple question to each of our panelists. And round two, what we have structured is have one of our panel members reach out directly to another panel member, highlighting a prick point from what they have observed real world, and in sort of establish some sort of a collaborative synergistic tone to see what's happening. This is my problem. How can we work together and solve? So that's the overall flow. So with that, I'll start with common question to all the panelists here. So in the near term, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5, relatively speaking, which facet of, let's say, we are talking about smart, scalable, and sustainable, what is your organization, you focusing on, which aspect of it? Because maybe it could be the most challenging, it could be the it could potentially have the most transformative impact on ZET uptake. Maybe unlocking that, it's going to open up the other, unlock the other bottlenecks. So the question is very straightforward, like which facet of smart, scalable, and sustainable is you and your organization focusing on in the near term? So I'll start with Gopi Shankar.
Hello. Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting for this summit. It's a difficult question to select between a smart, scalable, and sustainable. All are almost equal, but from the time perspective, let me focus on the smart portion. Now, to just give an analogy, we saw a lot of uptake of so-called smartphone from the existing phone. Why that happened? Because the phone was smart. The smart, it means it is able to put through a lot of data, give you a lot of outputs. You are able to use it in a much more manner. So that's what we also call here as a smart network, smart infrastructure, where we also believe that there will be a lot of data that needs to be analyzed, make the charging much faster, much safer. And not only that, you also have with the data do a lot of prognostics, you have a lot of preventive maintenance also done. So the smarter the infrastructure, the smarter the vehicle plus the infrastructure happens, the more there will be an uptake, is what I believe, more there will be an uptake for customers to move towards a zero emission truck vehicle. So that's where the smarter comes into the picture. Time perspective, I'm just done.
You're doing fantastic, thank you. So now over to Ravikiran, I have the same question to you.
Thank you, good afternoon all. So when we work on this area, we've done in some work in some of the other international markets. We looked at 3 use cases when you look at freights and trucks coming in. One is, how are these vehicles going to charge? The 3 use cases we saw. One is at the depot, one is at the destination, and third is on the move. So at the depot, the vehicles are stationary, they come overnight, and they have to be charged. So requirements of charging at that level are different. When you are at a destination, you deliver your goods and you're at a destination, you get 2 to 3 hours to charge. That's a different use case. And then on the move, when you're on the road, you want an electric charge, that use case is very different. Just to give you an example, when it's in a depot, maybe 120, 180 kilowatt is sufficient for charging the truck because it's stationary for 6 to 8 hours, at least at the depot. When you look at destination, it's going to be only for 1 to 2 hours. That's where you look at 360 kilowatt, 400 kilowatt charges coming in. And when you are on the move is where you now start seeing the megawatt charging, because you want to charge it as soon as possible, as fast as possible, give a quick top up, quick charge to go. Technically, when you want to make all of this smart, there is a lot of data, a lot of information available. Each one of them pose a different challenge. If you're at a depot, if you're on the move or at a destination, challenges are different. Broadly, what we saw are the challenges come around scheduling and queuing. You want to ensure from the data available from the vehicle, from the charger, you want to put the right vehicle in front of the right charger and give the right amount of energy. So that's one problem, scheduling and queuing. Second problem comes is more the load management. The smartness brought in to ensure that wherever you created the hub, in any of these 3, you don't exceed the load limits what you have. So you can control it at the charger level, at the vehicle side. So the controls are at different levels to ensure you can do this. And going forward, I think you talked about next 3 to 4 years, we also believe a lot of things will happen with an interplay with the grid. That's when you'll start looking in the demand patterns on the grid side, tariff on the grid side, and see how you can do an interplay between a charging hub and that. That requires a lot of data interplay, protocols involved, and you'll have a lot of work to do from a smartness point of view. The last being on the go, I think here is where a lot of people look at how do you prioritize from the vehicle side, because you know which vehicle is coming and the destination known with the fleet management, how do you charge? So in nutshell, lot of data coming in, lot of smartness coming in.
So data is the new oil and more, I would say. So up to Kartikey.
Thanks, thank you so much. Well, just to take it for what Ravi mentioned, so Ravi is obviously the smartest guy in the room today. At CharZone, we have been building a high-speed and super-fast charging infrastructure. Being the second largest CPO in the country, we have electrified more than 30,000 kilometers of highways. And our new venture called Billion Electric actually has deployed the first set of electric trucks, of course supported by Gopi from Ashok Leyland. He has actually ditched us and moved to Switch Mobility, by the way. But these are the 19-tonner and 55-tonner that has come up. And as CharZone, we support high-speed infrastructure ranging from 240 kilowatt to 1.2 megawatt as a cumulative capacity at a single charging station. Now, this brings to 2 parts, the scalability and sustainability initiatives rather. Well, so since the topic is about ZETs today, large focus is on the corridors. The large focus is on the highways, where NHEV currently more or less operates around 300 to 400,000 kilometers of highways in the country. We believe that 30% of them are industrial and commercial corridors of India which needs to be electrified. Electrified in the sense that a charging station need to be put at regular intervals, let's say on a 100-kilometer pitch distance on LHS as well as RHS of each of these highways. But fast charging stations are not enough. A fast charging station typically is a 60 kilowatt to 120 kilowatt. A super fast charging is generally rated at 150 kilowatt and above. That's a way to put the nomenclature at site. Now, having said that, the scalability of such supercharging infrastructure is a task by itself. It's as if that you are creating or developing petrol pumps, or let's say EV charging pumps, at the given locations in question. And there, beyond the nice-looking charging stations, is a lot of brick and mortar work called power infrastructure, which is generally at 11 kV or 33 kV, which is a massive task and a challenge by itself, which I think we will address this during the course of this session today. But having scaled up or having thought of developing a plan to scale up this infrastructure comes a massive question, that is a renewable energy integration on the upstream side. Because even going by a simple math, while talking about zero emission, if the charging infrastructure or EV charging is not enabled by renewable energy, then I don't think we really qualify to call it as zero emission. There are ways and means people have defined, zero emission in the market. But personally, myself and our team at Charzon, we believe that RE integration is the key. Thankfully, government has laid down those guidelines and policies to access renewable energy either through a local microgrid and energy storage or through open access. But yes, as an EV charging company, the smartness part, the scalability part, and the sustainability integration or RE integration will be the key to the future over the next 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, Kartikey. Over to Abhijeet Sinha, just to reinforce, like, which facet that are you most focusing on as one of India's leading piloting agency, your next immediate near-term focus, smart, scalable, and or sustainable?
You are asking challenges?
It could be challenges that you're trying to solve, unlock, or it could be like you're going to focus on one of them because it could unlock a couple of other value chains. It's your call, your focus area, priority. It could be challenges or wins, whatever you want to take it.
So basically we are talking here about a solution, which is a mobility solution, changing a fuel, going to somewhere else. The solution which we are providing right now, it's more on the tertiary level. It's not going deep, addressing the exercise of taking and giving somebody a confidence that they trust you. Why this trust deficit I'm saying is, if you will look at the ecosystem on which we are putting electric mobility into people's pocket, you will see yet they are doing exactly the way we used to sell golf carts. You are meeting certain amount of people, telling them, getting into and designing of a product, giving it to them. It works for them, it's good for premises. The business model, rigid mentality of being married to a business model, to a certain time it is also a lack of credible data to compare between diesel, LNG, hydrogen, electric, whatever it is required to be brought for a informative decision making is completely missing from the ecosystem. I come from a belief that government has no business to be in the business. And my work, day-to-day work is to pull out government from businesses. And it will only happen when we will be able to make it possible on PPP. That you know your business, it is profitable, it is fit to pocket, you will be able to do it. But what happened, if you ask me the trouble or the ambition or the difficulty, now electric mobility has a history of around 13 years in India. And this history is not only technical development history of the tech, it is also having a history of failed commercialization despite of claiming that I'm cheaper than diesel. And this failure is not only, in 2018 when I was given responsibility to only do a small pilot for Delhi, Jaipur and Delhi, Agra, I was told that there is no guideline. Once we decided Delhi, Jaipur and Agra, then guideline came. Guideline given in initial was 25 kilometer, one station. Then after trial, we said it should be 50 kilometer. Otherwise, you will put up a lot of money into it. बट धीरे धीरे ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम बहुत सारे एम्बिशंस इसमें आए. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेके कुछ नहीं था, फ्लीट को लेके कुछ नहीं था. सो तो टोटल सपोर्ट विच वॉज फोकस्ड ऑन सिटी बेस्ड OEMs, 2-wheeler, 3-wheeler cars, not beyond that, has over a period of time 2018 to 2024 has reached to the fleet operator, user, infrastructure and much more, even risk guarantee too. In this industrial, from the industrial guideline to draft policy of electric mobility, there are certain level of unwanted, not required blame game which has happened and which has hurt the transition. Two of them which are very major I would like to bring here.
So we could come back to in the next round. So if I had to take that, there is a lot happening. So in a single word or so, let's say if you were to pick, so it's going to be, let's say, I would probably choose as a piloting agency and tech trial. So Scalables, you've highlighted the challenges fantastically. So now go to Gurusharan. So just to keep the question and in the interest of time, so we have talked about, Abhijeet talked about the challenges. We heard about the developments that are happening. So between these three sort of salient aspects, you and what you represent, what do you see as the focus priority in the near term that the ecosystem or you, or people like you, should focus on to accelerate the zero emission truck uptake?
So, I think in one word, if I was to think of a word, of course, sustainable, scalable is all important, but I think the first word I would search for is adoption. How do you actually scale up adoption? And I understand that this is more with an emphasis on trucks. There was an experience, the session before spoke about pilots that we're doing in the trucking segment. The truck segment in India is very, very unique. Every vehicle is designed for a certain payload. But talk to any truck driver and he will assure you that on no route does he take a overload of less than 25 to 30%. Otherwise, the trucking tariff just does not become feasible. So it is by design overloaded by 25 to 30%. That is the first challenge. The second is that because the pricing structure of freight transport is extremely competitive, truck owners are hesitant. You don't have any large truck players. They're a very scattered set of small entrepreneurs. So they're very hesitant to make investment in new technology, and especially in technology which is to be proven on a commercial scale, and also which needs the support infrastructure in terms of minimizing downtime. Because for an asset like a truck, a downtime is a very expensive cost to the operation. Today, the charging infrastructure conversation is largely happening in urban contexts and also along highways. But I think in one of the early sessions I heard some reference about having charging infrastructure at the warehouse, wherever that person is going to offload his cargo. But I think there needs to be a little more deep thinking into where does a truck driver actually take his halts, where does he refuel. So he is given a certain amount of money to cover his trip, and then he chooses to refuel at particular points based on his convenience. And typically when he reaches his offloading destination, which is where his maximum downtime is, that time he is then looking for another source to recharge. So we need to make sure that the charging infrastructure is built around the usage patterns of the trucking fraternity. And that, I think, will become possibly the first to adoption. In terms of the capital cost, I think there will need to be some sort of government support or incentive towards trucks, because with an electric truck, it's very obvious that the cost of running is lower than a conventional diesel truck. So the end customer wants to take advantage of that lower freight cost upfront, but he is not willing to help amortize the capital cost in the beginning. And you also have the challenge of financing bodies who are hesitant to finance electric assets because of the absence of residual value use cases on ground.
Okay. To Priti. Same question.
Okay, thanks, Sesha. And in the interest of time, I would want to pick up the word sustainable. Also wearing the hat of my organization, it does kind of, it's inbuilt in me to speak of sustainable, though scalable and sustainable at this moment are kind of two contrasting words when it comes to charging infrastructure. But just on the aspect of not just installing charging infrastructure, I think the game doesn't end there. It's also about making it scalable and sustainable, emphasizing more on sustainability at this moment, because unless and until it's sustainable, it's not really green, like Mr. Kartikey already mentioned on the panel. Unless and until it's powered by a renewable energy and not coming from a fossil fuel-based energy, it doesn't really solve the purpose of kind of going green in any of the sense. So EVs at the moment, I would say, great. We are also talking of trucks, which is a fairly competitive space to be when it comes to business, but also kind of keeping a conscious check of kind of integrating RE power when we are talking about ZETs, because ZET do already kind of demand or signal us a peak or a kind of a plethora of demand in terms of power supply and kind of overburdening the current grid at the moment. So one should be really conscious about not overburdening the grid, whether it be highways or urban areas, but also keeping a conscious check on how we can integrate on-site solar power generation, how we can have best systems like battery energy storage systems coupled with the charging infrastructure that we are planning to scale up, so that we're almost greening the entire EV value chain and not just looking at a point source problem.
All right. Thank you, Priti. Switching gears a little bit, I know we are talking about EVs still, but so we're trying to switch up a little bit here, trying to, the panelists have been kind enough to agree to make my job a little easier. So now they are going to ask, like, probably the idea is for stakeholders here to highlight one key challenge that they have identified and then reach out or just relate to the other stakeholder within the value chain, just to see what they are doing to tackle this particular problem or challenge or what's happening. That's the flavor. So let's give it a try. So I'm going to start with Gopi Shankar.
Just to give a quick background, at our Ashok Leyland switch combination, we have covered almost all vehicles. We have a 2.5 ton e-DOST, 3.5 ton DOST, and 19-ton BOSS vehicle. Of course, Mr. Kartikey is my first customer, and 55 ton Avatar range. In addition to this, we also have the buses, different kinds of buses. Now, across this, if you see the battery capacity, it is varying from 30 kilowatt hours all the way to 300 kilowatt hours. So, and charging is one of the most key aspects, because that's a point we are seeing, I will say, very low efficiency in terms of time to charge. I am saying it is the most riskiest portion of the entire event of an electric vehicle running, where that's the most dangerous areas. And that's the area where we will require a lot of data. So my question I would like to ask to Ravikiran is that, how are you, one of the things we are also very interested is, what happens while charging? What are the data available? How can we take those data to improve our, and there are challenges when we charge with one charger supplier versus another charger supplier. There are certain parameters to be changed and all. So for us, how can you make the data while charging available to us? And there are other issues, let's say data piracy related to our vehicles and all. How will you can manage this?
Thank you, Gopi. Oh, no problem. Thank you, Gopi. EV is a connected ecosystem. I think we keep talking about IoT, and we talked about connected ecosystem for a decade. I think EV is one of the use cases where everything is connected, whether it is start from your vehicle, which has now telematics and a lot of data collected and stored in the cloud. At the same time, the charger collects a lot of data also stored in the cloud. And if you use a fleet management system, they have a lot of data, which again back into the cloud. So there is a wealth of data. And many of the problems depends on which use case we pick. There are technologies now available to fix those. I mean, when we look at charger predictive maintenance with the charger locks available and the car data available, we can try to optimize what is the best thing. And when you look at vehicle, the second life of a battery can be optimized based on the charger data and the battery data. So all of these use cases come up, but what is important as a country when we move forward with so much of technology being deployed is, what are we doing with this data? With the governance principles, not about the use case only. So I always look at it as 4 aspects which we need to keep in mind when we look at data. One is, who owns the data? So data ownership is a major question which often doesn't get answered. I mean, not to talk about a vehicle OEM here. I mean, if a vehicle generates data, is it the data of a Switch or Ashok Leyland, or does the owner of the vehicle own the data? Who owns the data? It is still not very clear in the ecosystem as to who owns it. Both want to own it. One is needed to improve the vehicle, other is needed to improve the operation. So who owns the data? The second question which comes is mostly on the personally identifiable information. These are called PII. Europe has GDPR. We will come up with DPDP sometime this year or next year. So it's about data privacy. Whose data is it? Is there a personally identifiable information? Do we have a driver's information? Do we have a person's information there? So that is extremely important on how we handle the data. We don't want anybody to see what they should not see from a personalized data. In fact, the vehicle location itself sometimes can be a personally identified information. So do we share that information? Do we not share that information? So that's an interesting, tricky challenge to think about. So that's the data privacy. Then comes data security. I mean, we talk about a lot of hacking, a lot of people getting into all kinds of systems. When I said it's all a connected ecosystem, everybody has a cloud, everybody has a server running now, and potentially a spot for hacking. Anybody can hack in and get either the charge point data, either the vehicle OEM data, or the personal data. So how do we protect this? I think there are, we as a collective ecosystem, we need to build protection against cybersecurity hacks, any hack which can come in, which can destabilize the whole ecosystem. The last part also to remember is data localization. Many countries now have a policy that data has to be in the country. If you have a cloud, if you have data stored, it should be in the country, should not go out of the country. I mean, India, we have a lot of cloud centers, data centers where we store, but often we also miss and it goes out of the country. I mean, if you use a standard traditional cloud, the data can be stored anywhere. So I think protection against where the data gets stored, because it's also important when we build all these use cases and we grow the ecosystem, we need to have this. So I would say these 4 aspects have to be kept by anybody in the business. And then on top of it, then we can start building use cases which solve either a vehicle specific problem, battery specific problem, charger specific problem, or fleet optimization. There are many use cases which needs to be fixed.
Thanks a lot, Ravikiran. So over to Kartikey, very straightforward, practical prick point, and what do you want to pose it to the other stakeholders here, and what do you propose as a solution or a resolution from the people here?
Maybe I'll share one point, and probably I have one question for Gopi actually.
Please.
Being an OEM representative here. So one of the challenges that we are solving is the reliability. A lot has been talked about range anxiety, but the reliability anxiety is another challenge from the EV charging infrastructure point of view. Same is applicable to commercial trucks, where the stakes are even higher. I've seen the personal mobility goers, EV owners, EV car drivers, tend to kind of compromise with themselves. Okay, this is not working, I'll go to the next charging point. But for the commercial or large EV truck, that's not the case. And therefore, we have initiated a very creative solution internally called microgrids, which is a very well-known thing in renewable energy. But microgrids with large-scale energy storage. Over the last 2 quarters, good news around. Of course, there are a lot of other challenges in e-mobility industry or EV ecosystem. But the good news is the prices of the battery cells or battery packs have started to rationalize. We have seen that the prices have gone much lower, below the $200 mark, $200 per kWh mark, which was around for a very long time. And therefore, we asked ourselves, can we become a prosumer? We produce our own electricity and we consume it. Therefore, effectively, you are bringing a 24/7 reliability to your own supercharging station. In fact, Bangalore-Chennai has been our first deployment route. And at 2 locations at Vellore and Krishnagiri, one each, we have solved this particular challenge by bringing in the microgrids and large-scale energy storage. Now, therefore, coming to Gopi. Gopi, we have been involved with you during your EV trucking days and now in switch mobility as well. Over the last 2 quarters, we have seen the reduction in the price of battery, right? What are the challenges that OEM currently has in terms of rationalizing the pricing, or let's say improving upon the TCO? Because we all understand it's a no-brainer, honestly. Because today I'm talking as Charles, but if I speak as billion, I'd like to get your vehicle at a competitive price. I'm not saying a cheaper price, but at a competitive price that helps me beat TCO for diesel. So when do you think that is going to happen? And at the same time, why the rationalization is not being passed on to the buyers yet?
When it's going to happen is a big question, really difficult to answer. But why it's not being passed upon is not correct. Means earlier we had taken a hit and then we are now doing this. The point what is coming out is that it cannot be that we don't pass on, because there will be competition, and obviously one OEM versus other OEM, there will be price war and all this will happen. So naturally we'll go through that. But the key point here is the differentiation which each OEM will try to bring. From us, from Ashok Leyland, we'll try to bring in some of the key differentiation in terms of efficiency, so that for the same set of batteries, you're getting a longer range, because that's what you'll be looking at from a turnaround of your vehicle point. The other portion is new technologies. There are new technologies coming up. Let's say there are swappable battery technology, there's a wireless chargers, there are pantograph chargers. Now these again, all these technologies will depend on the charging infrastructure. So there we have to work together, maybe find an optimal solution to this. One of the key points which will come here is the application versus the vehicle. Unlike a car or a two-wheeler where the load is more or less the passengers, so your end goal is almost same. But if you take a commercial trucks, the trucks may carry a day coal, another day it may carry milk, another day it can carry water. I'm saying the different trucks. So you can't make one solution which solves all the vehicles. So more so in EV, we have to be carefully map the type of charging infrastructure, the type of cell chemistry, the type of the vehicle, battery versus all this combination to give you the best TCO. And this is where we are, would like to work very closely with customers to understand the exact requirement, because there are so many technologies available. Again, with a lot more data, you'll be able to refine it even further. So that's how the whole cycle will go in these cases.
Thanks, Gopi. Just to add to what Kartikey was mentioning is like the cost reduction, the point of sale has not kept pace with the overall macro level sectoral cost reductions that are in the battery cell pack module, wherever we want to call. So this pace to catch up is what Kartikey, so that eventually it passed on to the end user. And Gopi Shankar was like, kind of walked us through the key challenges in terms of rationalizing how we pass on the sort of sectoral gains into even all the way down to disaggregate end users. Okay, fantastic. So now to Abhijeet Sinha ji, just a very straightforward, like practical prick point that you see, and like if you had to pick anybody here, not in the audience but here for simplicity, how can they help unlock or solve what exactly it is? To OEM, CPO, also the on the energy grid integration side. Yeah.
First, you tell me how many minutes?
2 minutes. 3, 2.5. Let's 2.5.
Industry is already confused. I don't want to be cut short. In between, they'll get more confused.
So we are sponsoring dinner. CEEW is sponsoring dinner. So we can just have a 3-hour conversation.
Let me press it in 2 minutes. TV debate style. Okay, fast. They will digest. They are senior.
Please. Yeah.
Government changes in 2014. 14 to 18, FAME 1, FAME 2. 2019, I was supposed to campaign for PM in the next term. There was no clear number of electric mobility, what they have done in last 4 years and what they will do in next 10 years. Problem started from then. We went to Power Ministry, got a very good debate, good reform came out that there is no license required for setting up charging station. Now people said, guideline came, since we started doing pilot on Delhi-Jaipur, but there is no mention of land, power and infrastructure and many other things. There is no rule book for premises. हमारे पास अभी चार्जर का स्टैंडर्ड ठीक से नहीं था, क्लियर नहीं था. उस समय आप पेट्रोल पंप से कंपेयर करने निकल पड़े हम लोग. Now, in this comparison, in next 2 years, National Highway EV given clarity on the detailing of the premises on the petrol pump level, right from design to technology to rule book to standard to certification. Second problem was brought to me, commercial model नहीं है, finance कैसे करेंगे 25 करोड़ के स्टेशन. I given annuity hybrid e-mobility, a proven model started from 2015, proven and changed the complete infrastructure of national highway. आज के डेट में not national highway EV. This model is on annuity hybrid e-mobility. It solved the problem. Third, the biggest problem which was in, what is the turnaround time? What is the break-even period of vehicle, infrastructure and the mobility? This also got solved. Now, e-highway, as a word, when you are saying e-highway का मतलब क्या है? कोई कहीं भी किसी भी ढाबे पे चार्जर लगाकर अगर बोल दे ये e-highway बन गया, announced. Is it e-highway? There are only 2-3 types of e-highways, Germany and America and India. If you have to understand the meaning of e-highway, you have to understand the trust which you have to give to the people who are taking vehicle. Two things we managed to give in this is, if you shut down with electric vehicle, we will reach to you within 30 minutes. And to deliver this, we need to have a charging hub bigger than petrol pump. After each 50 kilometer, then you will be able to uphold this transition. और नॉट, आपको वो जो एक विश्वास होना चाहिए व्यक्ति को इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल लेके हाईवे पे जाने के लिए, वो विश्वास आप पूरा नहीं कर पाओगे. 4 साल काम करो, 5 साल करो, डज नॉट मैटर. 13-14 से पिछले 13-14 सालों में जितने डिसीजंस प्रोक्योरमेंट के, फाइनेंसिंग के और मे बी विद गुड इंटेंट सब्सिडीज़ के लिए गए हैं, वो आज या तो क्रिटिसिज्म में है या तो स्क्रूटनी में है. अगर आज जो डिसीजन आप ले रहे हो 2 साल होने के बाद ई फास्ट का, आपके पास फेल होने का भी टाइम नहीं है. इट इज़ ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ हैविंग बिल्डिंग एंड क्रेडिबिलिटी वेयर विंडो ड्रेसिंग विल बी एटलीस्ट इम्पॉसिबल फॉर एन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टू शोन इट प्रॉफिटेबल. लास्ट 20 seconds I will tell you to give is the designing, drafting and funding and running a complete transition is not the sole responsibility of government. You ask for a battery swapping policy with the leadership intent कि आपको डीजल का, पेट्रोल का और इलेक्ट्रिक का प्राइस बराबर करना है. स्वैपिंग की पॉलिसी का ड्राफ्ट आया, हम कंसेंसस नहीं बना पाए एज एन इंडस्ट्री, साइज़ के ऊपर, कनेक्टर के ऊपर, मटेरियल के ऊपर. क्या अगले 10 साल तक आप कौन सी बैटरी बनाना चाहते हो, इसके ऊपर इंडस्ट्री कंसेंसस नहीं बना सकती. ये बीमारी पहले मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में थी कि हम शायद किसी का कोई ये कनेक्टर था, किसी का वो कनेक्टर था. अभी वो बीमारी चार्ज पॉइंट ऑपरेटर्स में आ गई है. We are married to business model. We do not want to look at it that people who are traveling on highway, they have a different problem. They have a problem of RSA, they have a problem of confidence, they have a problem of charging. They have to reach to a place where they do not want to get stuck. कि चार्ज मिला ही नहीं मुझे वहाँ जाने से. So one dispenser coming on petrol pump is not making an highway e-highway. My last 20 seconds is just to give you one very, very important part is, if I am not ready to fail, if I am not ready to give you an clarity on how technical comparison is going between multiple models, multiple ways of procurement, multiple ways of financing, then it would be very difficult for us to, it's like आपने एक फिल्म बना दी है लेकिन आप प्राइवेट प्रीमियर अलाउ कर रहे हो, आप उसको फिल्म को रिलीज़ ही नहीं करना चाहते. या तो उसके ऊपर आपको कॉपीराइट का डर लग रहा है, या तो आप किसी ऐसे मॉडल को प्रमोट करना चाहते हो जिसके पीछे सप्लाई चेन, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, उसका लैंड प्रोक्योरमेंट, इन सब चीज़ों के बैक एंड तैयार नहीं है. इफ़ यू आर क्रिएटिंग दिस, it will remain a private audition, it will remain a private. I am ready to release my picture, I am ready to bring the results of technical trial 3. Last बार हमने deliberations नहीं किए थे, गाड़ियाँ आई, flag off हुई और चली गई. This year, this third trial, we have conducted 2 days deliberations, one on the financing completely and second on the components. Whatever result will come, regardless of the fact that whether it's a successful trial or a failed trial, either it's a bouncer or it's a rocker, It will be thrown on the industry. It depends on you, how you take it, how much you are prepared from the back end, from the supply chain, power, infra, renewable is going to come out, and also the financial instrument. If you ask me, financial instrument is very, very important. It is without a financial instrument, you will not be able to uphold. You can't expect government to give me a petrol pump-like network in a platter. So for me, one last line is, please join hands together, conduct more technical trials so that you get to know what is happening on ground. Otherwise, we will keep on doing Excel exercise and PPT exercise.
Thank you, Abhijeet. So, Gurusharan, so
I have a question that is to my fellow panelists is, I do not want to make a station which is not powered by renewable. After 6 years, I will be asked to go back on the sketchboard and do it renewable. So how do I do it now? I have 2-3 options, solar, hydrogen, and wind. The vertical turbine which we are trying to place in front of National Highway EV stations. What is your take? And then I also want you to speak on the financing of the same.
over to you, Gurusharan.
Thank you, sir. When Dr. Sesha said 2 minutes, I was looking forward to Maggie. Okay, now you said solar, wind, and hydrogen, so I'll confine my answers to only solar and wind, and out of which I'll focus more on solar because of the sheer abundance of solar. Today, the conversation in the charging space, wherever you go, is all about increasing the upstream infrastructure in terms of renewable integration, on how does the grid further integrate the number of RE resources on the upside so that then the downstream becomes cleaner. But the pilots, or let's say the activities that are happening globally, are happening more on the downstream side. There is and again I'll speak specific only to trucks, there's a pilot that Scania is doing right now in Sweden. It's a 1.5 hectare solar park. They're going to have, it's coupled with a 2 megawatt energy storage. It can power about 22 vehicles. So I think overall the conversation now is moving towards how do you tap the downside potential, and the answer of course is solar is the best choice. Wind we don't have we don't have access to wind across India, whereas solar it is more or less uniformly available. And the second is coupled with battery storage, it becomes a very easy to implement solution. The second part is that, so your second question was financing. Yes. So financing, no doubt, is extremely important for any activity to work. Today, the demand side incentives in terms of FAME or EMPS have been mainly in terms of incentivizing customers to increase adoption, and on the supply side it is to boost the local manufacturing. In terms of the charging ecosystem, I'm not sure whether Kartikey ji would like to comment on it, because today when I see it as an external perspective, I find that utilization rates for charging infrastructure are significantly low because it's directly linked to adoption. And while that, because the capital outlay has been made in terms of the infrastructure upfront, as a CPO, how does one sustain that continued inroad into expanding network? And from the user side, when I look at it in terms of adoption, and I spoke about it earlier, is that how do I offer my customer the expected price while ensuring that I can amortize the capital value? So I think these are two very contrary demands that we have. I think I answered your question, sir. Did I miss?
One follow-up. We asked Power Ministry that if I am not in position to set up solar on the rooftop or the same location of station, I can set up somewhere else. It was given green open access registry or something, and then some sort of no wheeling charges. No, what you call DISCOM is willing to work on zero wheeling charges. They do not listen to ministry. We went to minister clearly said, agar aisa koi karta hai, aap mujhe bataiye, we will be very strict. It came in newspaper. What is the problem with DISCOM? What is their issue? If we will not generate solar somewhere else, how we will power a station? Ek station ko 3 megawatt chahiye.
So the question is very nice, and I think the answer is also very simple.
Let me
Sure.
Yeah, right. So I think there are two parts, right? So the financing of EV charging infrastructure is largely driven through equity today and less through debt. Debt financing or bankability of such EV charging networks is only possible if there is a guaranteed utilization, such as GCC buses. They set up the charging infrastructure. There is a guaranteed utilization of 18-20% because the bus need to run 200 or 220 kilometers a day and so on. But when it comes to ZETs, fortunately, we are entering into a very controlled or semi-controlled business environment from a private enterprise point of view. When I say semi-controlled or controlled in the sense, there is a guaranteed number of kilometers that a truck will run. Therefore, it requires a certain number of energy units, and therefore, the charging infrastructure can be fueled by both equity and debt instruments. Now, coming to the greening of this, there is RE integration. There are only two ways to do it, as we all know. One is solar rooftops, as Abhijeet mentioned. Microgrids cannot directly power any charger. For that matter, solar rooftop cannot power any load directly. It has to go, either it's grid-tied, grid-connected, or it goes through an energy storage device. The second one is, and probably the most important, and from scalability point of view, is a must-do thing, is allow the open access or wheeling of power with a minimum possible layers of cost, such as wheeling cost, transmission charges. There are, if it is open access, there are cross-subsidy charges and so on. Because even today, as we all know, in CNI sector, commercial industrial sector, solar and wind both are extremely popular. But it is only popular in few limited states where DISCOM have contained such charges to a very, very reasonable level. But having said that, we all know that electricity is the subject of state and not the center. Central government can only give guidelines, but it's the state DISCOMs who have a right to implement certain of them, or since the electricity is also driven by a lot of populist measures, therefore, the entire power sector or the electricity distribution tariffs and the charges thereof are decided by the local state government from time to time. And by the way, every fiscal year in the month of April, each of the state electricity regulators, they come up with a new set of charges, guidelines, and so on. However, what it will take now, I still am not losing the hope over here. In case of green hydrogen or green ammonia sectors, as we know that it requires several megawatts and gigawatts of power. For the first time, government has said that the transmission charges shall be waived off for any interstate transmission of power in case of green hydrogen. If the similar policy, not policy, actually regulation can be brought into effect, that for every EV charging station of, let's say, certain kilowatt at a particular location shall be exempted from all these charges, then we not only will be able to bring sustainable initiative through RE integration, but also scalable in nature.
गवर्नमेंट से हम उम्मीद रखते हैं, गवर्नमेंट भी हमसे कुछ उम्मीद रखती है. अगर गाड़ियों की प्राइस बराबर करनी है, OEM एक लेवल पे नहीं आ पाए, आपने एक बस मिस कर दी, अभी तक व्हीकल प्राइस बराबर हो गई होती. बैटरी स्वैपिंग की सब्सक्रिप्शन लेके आए, सब्सक्रिप्शन के ऊपर हमने बस के ऊपर SUV के ऊपर कोई ट्रायल ही नहीं किया. हम सिर्फ 2 व्हीलर 3 व्हीलर में फंसे रहे पिछले 10 साल तक. अगर बैटरी का कॉस्ट गाड़ी में से निकाल देते हैं तो डीजल के ऑलमोस्ट बराबर हो जाती है. We will have to give them some confidence that if you are giving me next 10 years, I am going to be showing you a more compatible and credible industry, that I am more than strong than hydrogen. Right now, somebody who has to take an adoption of electric mobility, he is saying you are confused between ethanol, hydrogen, LNG. First you fight and win, then you come to me, till then I will remain on the diesel.
Correct. So I think Abhijeet, this is a well taken point, probably one of the last point from my side today. Will the industry step up? Because I think government has done a bit on their policies and regulations and so on. And having said that, just by first principles, I want to kind of clear the clouds around hydrogen. To produce a kg of hydrogen, not by entropy of the universe calculation, but by going by thermodynamic first principle method, it requires 39 units of electricity to produce 1 kg of hydrogen. Today, electrolyzers, they require anywhere from 51 to 56 units. But what you call as a Brahma Vakya, you cannot produce 1 kg of hydrogen for anything less than 39 units of electricity, which also means that it will, for any mobility solution, a cost of hydrogen right at a dispenser level will never be less than 160 to 170 rupees per kg. So I think that settles as far as hydrogen is concerned. And finally, coming to e-mobility, I think scores of articles and literatures have been put together where it says that overall, any e-mobility platform, right from the socket to the wheels, is far more efficient than any form of vehicle that you see in the industry. So with this, I will settle that it's for the industry to step up the game now, going forward in e-mobility sector.
Sesha, last one line. Only is very, very important. Please to add to this. Here we don't have to defend hydrogen or electric mobility. Here we have to give confidence to the industry that whatever we said, whether it's a green wheeling or solar or whatever, we will have to give them a confidence that you are in safe hand on the highways.
On that note, so just to close the panel, so in the interest of time, and we have another session also. So I'll just take 10-15 seconds. So last point, the few points raised, the interlocking of issues that are stuck between state, center, and somewhere in between when it comes to land, discom. That's a very key issue whenever we are talking on the issue of highways or urban. Even it's a problem of urban also. That's a key issue that Kartikey also highlighted. And the same, and Gopi, Shankar and Ravikiran also clearly pointed out too. We have lots of data, but what do we do with it? So before we decide to do what we do with it, we have to clearly have a really good solid framework under which we have our own sort of guidelines and not emulate or simulate GDPR or the what's happening in the US. The data localization is a highly pertinent point that we seem to, everybody came here through Blue Smart or whatever, we are just giving away data, not giving away, but much more conscious because e-mobility being an IoT connected system, so data, that is something that came up, and everybody is kind of like aware of the discom related issues on be it tariff or the readiness in terms of supporting that megawatt level of size. So we have talked about the problems and challenges here. So one last question or sort of open proposition that Priti, that I'll hand over the mic, and she has we talked about bouncer and we talked about googly. Maybe it's a good length ball that Priti wants to pitch.
No, I mean we've spinned across the whole issue from going to hydrogen to EVs, and thanks to Sinha sir on spinning it off in all directions, right from the aspect of being a state subject or a central government issue. But coming back to the smart aspect of data, and repeatedly been hearing that data is the new oil. And across many partners in the ecosystem, we've been talking about this issue on how do we get all information on one common platform. And I think all the key stakeholders, important key stakeholders that I know of in the EV ecosystem somewhat are represented here. So it's kind of I would say an ending note question, and also a very important question to all the panelists here. And maybe Sesha, even you can start by answering this, that how do we really come together on a single platform for charging infrastructure? Like, can there be a national level or a national level data sharing platform? Because that's we've all been talking about this, but how do we really begin, and what does the roadmap look like? Sesha, if you would want to just wrap up your thoughts around that.
Yeah, the open proposition, we have like OEM, we have CPO, we have on the representing a trial. Like, can we some sort of come to a friendly middle ground where there is open sharing, to facilitate open access, we need open data. How do we come up? Is there any modalities around which we can establish, or at least informally agree to cooperate in good faith to accelerate the ZET transition, mainly when it comes to data sharing, be it pilots, be it the CPOs that are currently running here, OEMs, their internal data. So that's sort of an open proposition that we're not going to hold gun to the head and ask people to sign on anything, but this is something that we strongly urge the OEM, CPOs and piloting agency, Gurusharan, and also Priti to just think through. And then we have PSA here, so any sort of agreement we sort of come to, this is how we want to establish this data sharing. It could be a colloquium, consortium, whatever. And one of the things that we floated, it's like a data hackathon version of it. We have so many hackathons, a data hackathon, This would really, really help. We want solutions from far and near, not just near, but far and wide from this country. So on that note, I'll close. Hope everybody had learned a thing or two and have things to take away. I thank all our panelists for staying. I was told I went like 10.3 minutes over time, so I'll just apologize for that. That's it from me. Thank you.